Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course Environmental Impact Assessment. We will cover two subparts today. We'll look at socioeconomic impact assessments, and then we'll also look at another domain which is regarding resource efficiency. So accordingly, our coverage would include that in social impact assessment, we'll study a bit about concept of social impact, and then we'll look at the international guidance and standards in this regard, and then we'll look at the national legislation and guidance. Then in the second part, we'll look at the resource efficiency and then the international guidance and standards, and then the related national legislation and guidance with that aspect. So the expected learning outcomes is that you should be able to review the concept of social impact and then identify various international guidance and standards which are there, and then also review national legislation and guidance which align with the larger global context as well as align with the regional as well as the national context. In the second part, you should be able to conceptually explain resource efficiency, though we'll cover that more in the later methods section. Then you should be able to identify international guidance and standards, and then also identify national legislation and guidance, and know where to look for information. So looking at the concept of social impact, though we have been looking at those concepts. So social impact are changes to one or more of the following. So when such kind of changes happen, so people's way of life changes, that is how they live, work, play and interact, that changes. So that is also said to be social impact. Then their culture changes, the way, the kind of belief they have, custom, values and all, language or dialect they have. Then we see that their community is also how that changes. It's how the community is, the cohesion is there, there is stability, there is character and service and facilities which they get from the community. So any changes on that would also be considered within the social impact. So we also look at their political system, like the extent to which people are able to participate in decision making that affects their lives, and then the level of democratization that is taking place, and then the resources provided for this purpose. So how much they are able to engage, how much they are able to participate, and then they can be involved in the decision making. Likewise, we see that about their environment, the quality of air and water people and use, and kind of access they have to food, what they eat, and then the kind of hazard or risk they have. Then we also look into the health and the well-being. The health, when we look at health, is the state of complete physical, mental, social and spiritual well-being. Then also look at their personal and property rights. So there has been several reasons because of which in the initial period socioeconomic impact has been poorly integrated with the EIA process. So we see that most socioeconomic aspects are covered in the planning and development processes. So it's done beforehand, so it's an EIA is done at the later part, so mostly it's not, that's one of the reason given for not being integrated with the EIA. And there are also concerns that adding socioeconomic impact can reduce the significance of the impact on the biophysical environment. So it might dilute the biophysical environment, the socioeconomic environment might show up positive or negative or can be overweighted. And then And then there are also concerns that socioeconomic impact are regularly or mostly negative, so people tend to not consider that. And then there are other challenges, like it's very difficult to quantify the impact. So those kind of problems come. So it has been seen that there has been delay and slag in incorporating socioeconomic impact in the EIA process. So, socioeconomic impact is bound to happen in all the development projects. However, we see that it can be positive as well, and inclusion in EIA process can provide a balanced measure. So, it's advisable that social impact assessment should also be included in the EIA process. We will look into some of the key concerns which have to be included in the socioeconomic impact assessment. Like, one is about the participation. So there's need for having a meaningful public participation, which is very important, and it is also considered that it's vital, important for the correctiveness of the information, what you get, what you gather, what assessment you do, and to also for being very fair and just in the approach. So participation is considered to be important. Then the other aspect is about the human rights. We see that that's also crucial area, and Universal Declaration of Human Rights adopted by UN in 1948 has also applied this human rights to the business. So any development work which comes are also bound to comply by these considerations. And then we also see that it was the UN Human Rights Council which really clarified that companies are also subject to international human rights law. So some of the key examples where this social impact assessment have been seen or have been done and have been bringing major impact, or which were reported, is like the Marlin gold mine development in Guatemala, and then you see OK Teddy copper and gold mine in Papua New Guinea. So the links to these case studies have been provided to you, and these cases showed highlighted the concerns, including the large scale land disturbances and like how it can interrupt with the access to water, and how inadequate consultation, inadequate public participation can have impact on the local indigenous people. So these were the cases which really highlighted. So I've given you the link so that you can follow and read those cases more, and plus we'll do that in the method section. Further, we also find freestanding assessment documents such as human rights impact assessments. So there's also concern about whether it should be dealt with EIA or it can be independently handled. So you have human rights impact assessment guidelines as well. And you also see that there has been some positive initiatives such as usage of web-based tool, community-based human rights impact assessment tools which are available, as well as you can see Getting It Right tool is also there. So all the links have been given to you. Getting It Right tool has been developed by Oxfam and International Federation for Human Rights. And there's another concept which comes in social impact assessment is about the environmental justice. So you see the in the EIA process should take care of vulnerable sections of population. For example, they need to take care of the elderly, the poor, and the also the minority, ethnically disadvantaged groups, and certain areas which may be of particular value to these groups in terms of culture or religious belief. So these aspects have to be covered, and we see that there have been cases which have been refused permission to work or licensing in absence of such kind of assessment, or having a negative impact on the environment or their major concerns of environmental justice. So, one example which has been studied include nuclear enrichment center in Louisiana was not given license because they had some racial and economic discriminations issue. So, these are the social impact assessments, why it is important and what kind of key considerations are coming into it. And then we see that from 1991, a lot of emphasis is being given on including socioeconomic impact assessment in the EIA process. So, major impetus which we see is also coming from World Bank report of 1991, and then also UNEP in 1996, which emphasized the need to undertake the social impact assessment in EIA process. So, UNEP 1996 document showed a direct link between the social and subsequent biophysical impact. So, they showed how they are connected and how they really influence each other. For example, a project in a rural area can result in the migration of the large labor force, often with families, into the area with low population density. So, that can create a lot of pressure on the existing resources. And then increase in the population can also distort the existing political systems, networks, which we talked about. And then additional environmental impact can cause social changes, which in return can result in significant environmental impacts as well. So, what kind of changes happen that would lead to other kind of changes in the habitat and so on. So, UNEP and World Bank highlighted the need to undertake social impact assessment along with the EIA process. The World Bank stated that social assessment for EIA purpose should focus on how various groups of people are affected by the project allocation and what kind of regulations they apply, and then what happens to their resources. So, those kind of things have to be taken care of. And in particular, the World Bank highlighted that in project involving indigenous people, tribal people, or people dependent on fragile ecosystems, social impact assessment is particularly important because of close relationship between the way life of the group of people and the resources, how they work together. So, it's very important to look at both the aspects here. So, we saw that how these international agencies highlighted, emphasized the need to undertake and connect socioeconomic impact assessment with the EIA. Now, looking at some of the international guidance and standards. So, you have IFC performance standards on environmental and social sustainability. Performance standard, particularly one that establishes the importance of integrated assessment to identify the environmental and social impact, risk and opportunities of projects. So, here you see that performance standard 1 tells about how integrated assessment to identify the environmental and social impact, risk and opportunities of the project, how then effective community engagement has to be taken care of, and then the client's management of environmental and social performance throughout the life of the project has to be taken care of. All of these are very important for impact assessment concerning socioeconomic impact. And this particular performance standard is applied for the environmental and social risk and impact identification process. So, this performance standard is applied at that level. So, other IFC performance standards which are of particular relevance to the socioeconomic impact assessment, they include, you have PS2 which deals with labor and working conditions, then you also see PS7 which deals with indigenous people. So, performance standard 2 recognizes protection of fundamental rights of workers. So, it recognizes that and emphasizes good worker management relationship for sustainability of a company. And failure to establish or to enrich this worker management relationship can reduce the workers' commitment and retention, and can also like damage the project. So the requirements set out the performance. The requirements which are set out in the performance standards are further partially guided by number of international convention and instruments. So you can see that performance guidance are again supported by other policy, other instruments. So one you have is International Labour Organization, which supports, and then the UN. And this performance standard is again applicable in while undertaking environmental and social risk and impact identification process. So there is where this you apply. So looking at the objective of this particular standards, you see that it targets to have fair treatment and non-discrimination among the workers. Then good workers management relationship has to be maintained, and then there needs to be a compliance with relevant employment and labor laws. Further, workers' protection, especially vulnerable groups such as children, have to be seen, and then the safe and healthy working conditions have to be maintained, and no use of forced labor has to be there. So now you may also think of where the most of the development projects are located. So majority of the projects are often located in the remote and the rural areas. And when we talk about the remote and the rural areas, and most of these areas are often populated by the indigenous people, the tribal people. So that's common scenario in most of the countries. So that also needs to be taken care of. And performance standard 7 recognizes the indigenous people, and it recognizes indigenous people as a social group with identities which are distinct from the mainstream groups in the national societies, and it is considered to be the most marginalized and vulnerable segment of the population. So in many cases, their economic, social and legal status limits their capacity to defend their rights to an interest in land and in the natural and the cultural resources. And it may also restrict their ability to participate and benefit from the development. So considering that, performance standard 7 has the guidelines for this. So it identifies that indigenous people are particularly vulnerable if their lands and resources are transformed, encroached upon or significantly degraded. So what all can happen? And their language, culture, religion, spiritual belief and institutions may also come under threat. So because of this, as a consequence, indigenous people may be more vulnerable to adverse impact associated with the project development than non-indigenous communities. So this vulnerability may include loss of identity, culture and natural resource based livelihoods, as well as exposure to impoverishment and diseases. So we further see that the standard recognizes that major projects can create important employment opportunities for indigenous people. So there can be the positive aspect also to that, and then they can act as a mechanism tool to fulfill the social and economic aspirations. So based on that, the objectives which are set by through this performance standard include respect, human rights, dignity, aspiration, culture and natural resources, avoid or at least minimize the impact of projects on community, then also promote sustainable development benefits and opportunities in culturally appropriate manner. Further, it also has objective to has an ongoing relationship with the communities based on informed consultation and participation. So informed consultation and participation has to be maintained, ensure free and prior informed consent, and respect and preserve the culture, knowledge and practice of the indigenous people. Indigenous people may be particularly important consideration in the assessment process, in the process of EIA, in the process of social impact assessment. It will be an important consideration. And this performance standard is used again to in the impact identification process. So at that stage you use this performance standard. So we find other key guidances also. So we see that there is International Association for Impact Assessment, IIA, which provides guidance on social impact assessment, assessing and managing social impacts of projects. So that guidance is available, and it comes up with certain key aspects. So there's a guidance which has come up in 2015. It has certain key aspects. It includes, it talks about social license to operate. So not just the practical license, but the social license to operate, the acceptability of particular development project in the local, by the local community. Then it emphasizes the free, prior and informed consent. And this is the procedural mechanism which is developed to assist in ensuring the right of indigenous people to self-determination. And this concept came from like United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People and in 1989 International Labour Organization Convention. So through that it the key idea came. And then you also see human rights based approach refers to a conceptual and procedural framework directed towards ensuring the promotion and protection of human rights in policies. Further, this particular guideline highlights the human rights due diligence, which means taking care of the expectations and ensuring a proposed business action, transaction and acquisition has no hidden human right risk. So that has to be taken care of. So this document highlights that. Then this document also talks about non-technical risk. This relates to managerial, legal, social and political issues which are faced by the project in contrast to the technical risk like physical, structural or engineering or environmental risk. So it talks about all non-technical risks like the legal, social and political issues. Further, we see that it also addresses the social risk, and the World Bank defines social risk as the possibility that the whatever intervention is being taken place that would create or reinforce or deepen the inequity or the social conflict. So whatever social conflict is happening or inequity is there, that might be reinforced or be deepened, and that the attitude and action of key stakeholders may cut down the achievements of the development objectives. That one needs to, the concept of social risk is highlighted in this particular guidance. And then it also highlights the impacts of impacts and benefits agreement, how those agreements have to be negotiated between the affected people and the project developers. Then it also introduces the concept of sustainable livelihoods. So when we say sustainable livelihood, it refers to way of thinking about communities and people in terms of their capabilities and livelihood resources, like what kind of assets they have, what kind of capitals they have, and what kind of activities they take care of. So all those things have to be understood and incorporated. Then it also talks about the shared value, where the proponent of the project and also the community have to have shared value, then rather than stakeholders only looking at the profits of the project. And then it also aligns with the equator principles, which we talked about in the previous class. So we see other guidelines also. You have Bureau of Minerals and Petroleum, which again provides the guidelines. Then you also see Mackenzie Valley Environmental Impact Review Board, which also provides the guidance on how to conduct socio-impact assessment. Then you also have Asian Development Bank, which also provides sector-based guidance. So you have lots of series of guidance. So I have provided links to all of these. So you can see those guidance, how to undertake social impact assessment. So that was about the international guidance, and now we'll look at the national legislation and guidance. So in India, we see that there's overall manual which has been provided by MOE and then we also see sectoral manual which provides sector-based guidance and then how social impact assessment has to be taken. So the link has been provided to you to all the manuals. You can see how various components of social impact assessment has to be taken, like you can see here on-site, off-site, optimal land requirements, then land acquisition details, quantity and nature of employment, potential for stress, potential benefits, disbenefits, impact on health, impact on education, community health impact, potential impact on existing occupation, potential losses of livelihood, stress on medicinal plants, potential impacts to archaeological monuments and culturally, religiously important locations. So all these is like provided in the manual by the ministry. Then you see that UK also provides a green book on how to conduct socio-economic impact assessment. I have provided you the link here. And then you also see in Australia you have Federal Level Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999, which has the component of social impact assessment, and then they have also come up with innovative ways to link social impact assessment. And this particular act requires the decision makers to consider social and economic matters in deciding project approvals. So that comes within the EIA process. And not only that, in certain states have also adopted their special social impact management plans, like Queensland has adopted it. Then you also see you have Western Australia, which has innovative socio-economic impact initiatives, which have been taken in this place. So this was about the part 1, where we saw about the socio-economic impact assessment. Now we will move on to another part 2, where we'll look at the resource efficiency, and this again we are taking from the chapter 17 from Therivel and Wood's book, which textbook we are referring to. So in this we'll be looking at first at the international guidance and standards. So just before that, we'll just slightly touch upon the resource efficiency. What do we really mean by resource efficiency? Resource efficiency is, as by the name you can understand, it's the measure of input needed to produce a required product. So how much resources, if you can recollect the previous diagram also, we had seen there's the more input goes and more waste we generate. So you see that it takes care of the measures the input needed for production of any kind of product or project, and what kind of waste is generated with the product or project. So for example, the amount of energy which goes, the amount of water which goes, and then what kind of urban expansion happens, what kind of mineral extraction we do, and and then it's desirable that we have less input and less waste. So in IFC has a guidance on this through its performance standard 3, and which covers resource efficiency and pollution prevention. So these standards states that clients will be required to implement technically and financially feasible and cost effective measures for improving efficiency in its consumption of energy, water, as well as other resources and material input. So they are required to take care of this. So such measures will integrate the principles of cleaner production. So it's how they can really achieve it. So they can achieve it through the principles of cleaner production, through product design. Then they also by improving the processes, production processes, and then also by conserving raw material, energy, and water. And there are also benchmark data which are available. Client will be able to make comparison about how efficiently they are using the resources. And it is also required that to avoid generation of hazardous and non-hazardous waste material, and then as far as possible to reduce the generation of waste, and then to recover and reuse waste, and where the waste cannot be recovered or used, the client would be required to treat, destroy, or dispose it in an environmentally sound manner. So that all is stated in this particular performance standard. Further, we see that UNEP has through their SDGs states about the sustainable consumption and production, and it has targets to achieve by 2030 to achieve the sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources, by 2020 to achieve environmentally sound management of chemicals and all waste. So those targets are set which guides the global initiatives. Then you also see example as a Johannesburg plan of implementation, which has the entire chapter on sustainable pattern of consumption and production. This was as results of the UN Conference on Sustainable Development. So, 10-year framework of program on sustainable consumption and production pattern was prepared. You also see UNEP Global Partnership on Waste. They have published a database of waste management guidelines. So, it also informs how you can take care of the waste. And then we see in US also that NEPA has incorporated in their EIA process how these all these things can be incorporated in the environmental assessment, environmental statement. And they can look into the short term uses as well as reversible and irreversible commitment of resources. All those needs to be addressed in their environmental status. Then you also see European EIA directives which have the entire screening process where they have all the list of things where they have to provide characteristic of the project, what kind of project, what kind of process will be adopted. So that all takes care of the resource efficiency, and that would also include the use of natural material and what kind of how much land it will use, soil, water and biodiversity, and what kind of waste would be generated in the production. So even EIA directives takes care within their process how these resource efficiency is incorporated. Then directives again through its annexure 4 requires environmental statement which will include the description of the main characteristic of the operational phase of the project, and then it would also specify all the quantities, types of waste produced during the construction and the operation phase. So, looking at the national guidance and standards, so some of the countries have legislation on sustainable production and consumption, resource efficiency and waste avoidance. So, we can see example from Australia, the Victorian Environmental Protection Act 2002, which targets to promote the establishment of voluntary sustainable covenants to improve the efficiency of resource use and to reduce impact on the environment. So, they have this act in place. And then you also see New South Wales Waste and Resource Recovery Strategy of 2014 and 21 that also has targets for recycling waste. Then you also see resource related legislation. You have disposal of waste by landfill and increasing demanding requirements for energy efficiency of vehicle, appliances and lighting. So all these together. So you have we have covered like how different tools, modes and mechanism work. So you see how these targets are being addressed. So here you can see from Ministry of Environment and Forest that how the global environmental issues are being addressed, and then how they are looking at the potential problems, environmental problems at the transboundary level, and then at the wetland level, and then how the use of production of hazardous or toxic material can be controlled, and how potential impact on primitive and rare cultivated plants can be taken care of, and then other species, and then other nuclear radiation on site and off site can be taken care of. So today, summarizing what we covered today. So we saw we covered our section in two sub parts. In part one, we saw concepts of social impact assessments, and we looked at the international guidance and standards, and then we looked at the national legislation and guidance. And then we also covered another sub-theme of resource efficiency, where we looked at the international guidance and standards, and then also national legislation and guidance in this regard. So that was for today in this session. So this is our key reference. This is the key textbook we are using for this course. These are the suggested watch and read, and if you're interested to learn more, you can look at these videos. And please feel free to ask questions. Let us know about any concerns you have. Do share your opinions, experiences, and suggestions. Looking forward to interacting and co-learning with you while exploring EIA. Thank you.